This season of the NBA has been amazing so far. We're seeing a lot of interesting things, such as the slow starts for contenders like the Sixers and amazing starts for teams you didn't expect to see start this amazing 17-1 for the Cavs. Also, some other teams that are over or underperforming all throughout the standings. We're going to talk about that here today in the Basketball Bulletin. So make sure you subscribe. About 80% of viewers aren't subscribed, so make sure that you do stick around for more content. Also, sorry for the technical issues. I'm not able to be on the screen right now. I had a light give out on me, so I'm going to have to figure that out and get that working again. But that being said, I hope you guys enjoy. Which team do you think? Okay, I'm going to say this. Aside from the Cavaliers, because they're 17-1, which team do you think has been the most impressive? Or if you don't want to answer that, which team has surprised you the most? How about that? My own answer for that, and I guess you could say it's kind of both questions, is the Warriors. I actually think the Warriors have been amazing to start this season, and it's on multiple levels. I mean, it's if you look at the offense, the defense, they're kind of just amazing. Doesn't matter what you look at here. They are an awesome team so far. Now, I will say that every time you kind of talk about this, a lot of times people are going to bring up the schedule. I don't have the tankathon list here for hardest schedules left or hardest schedules completed, all that stuff. The Warriors have had, I guess, the Lakers have had a pretty easy schedule too, kind of give or take. What's happened is that the league has had a lot of matchups. Most of the teams have had like premier matchups versus certain teams. For example, the Warriors went into Boston and won. They lost to Cleveland the next game pretty badly, but that's okay. They then beat OKC, Dallas, and Memphis, the Clippers. Like, it's not like they haven't played any good games, is my point. So, like, it doesn't matter who you kind of talk about. For the most part, they have played some good games. Even like I said, the Lakers, they have had a recent easy schedule, but they started the season 3-0 against potential contenders or playoff teams, things like that. So they started the season pretty great. So all in all, though, the Warriors, they're second in rebounding, fourth in points, fifth in opponents' points, second in assists. They're probably like third in defensive rating as well. They have been amazing on the season. So let's go ahead and go down the Eastern Conference standings and start there, and then we'll make our way through the West. But once again, quick reminder, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe because we are going to keep you locked in for all the NBA news throughout the entire season and in the offseason, of course, but we're not there right now. And we are going to cover drama if it comes out because we like to talk about that stuff. Actually, we're just kidding. We do cover it, but we don't like to talk about it. Sometimes the stuff is kind of sad. We also are going to talk about everything, the way players are performing, potential trades, interesting stories. Like recently we covered why viewership is down. There was a fun video that we did that's gotten a lot of traction, a lot of different things. All right. Eastern Conference. Here we go. So Boston, Cleveland, top two teams here. Orlando in the third seed at 11-7. New York in the fourth at 9-7. You have Miami and the Bucks as well, closing out the actual playoff picture. It is pretty upsetting that the Eastern Conference is kind of just this bad. What's kind of happened here is that the Western Conference teams are destroying the Eastern Conference teams. I don't have the exact numbers. I could easily pull it up, but we're live in a video and I don't want to do that. But I did see a post. Maybe my editor will put it on the screen. I did see a post from Jason Timpf earlier over on Twitter where he basically said that the disparity between the East and West is basically the biggest it's ever been. The Western teams are destroying the Eastern teams to a degree we have not seen before, and that's why this has kind of happened. But then when you look at the West standings here, this also, like, they're kind of getting quote-unquote easy wins versus the Eastern Conference, but then struggling to play against each other. So that's kind of what's happened in the Western Conference. But regardless, kind of annoying that, this is how the playoff picture looks for the Eastern Conference. But nonetheless, the 5 seed teams at 500 and the Bucks have rebounded. Remember the Bucks started so slow and they were able to rebound? Yeah, that's pretty interesting. But they've made it all the way back due to some awesome play for Giannis. Dame is also, he's been kind of interesting, transitioning more into pass first phase. It almost feels like he's had multiple games with double-digit assists recently. His 3 ball is still not falling as consistently as he's used to, so that's another thing. But I think the Bucks are going to be interesting. Their problem is that it's not those guys so much. It's more or less the rest of the guys. They're also still trying to get Middleton out there. Seems like that's always kind of the case with him, unfortunately. But they're in a weird spot. But nonetheless, they've kind of rebounded in a meaningful way, and they could, let's look at their schedule here, they could wind up rebounding in a bigger way and make themselves a top like 3 or 4 seed here pretty soon if the schedule is forgiving, which I think it is actually. Yeah, it's going to be pretty forgiving. They've got a big game against Miami for standing implications, but I mean, it's so early in the season that doesn't matter a ton, but I guess for short term it does. Then you go to Washington, Detroit, Atlanta, a few games that you can win. I do like Detroit. They're really good this year, in my opinion, definitely better than than they get credit for. Same for the Hawks. I think they're pretty solid too. But those are definitely games. All three of these are games that the Bucks can win, right? Boston, going to be a tough one, but then you go to Brooklyn, Cleveland, then Washington, Chicago. Like these are games they can win. I would basically only take the Boston game or Celtics games as probable losses, but the rest of them they probably wind up being favored in. So they could wind up in a interesting position. On the topic of the Magic have been amazing here. First in opponent's points per game. That's amazing. Did they rise to the top overall defensive rated team? So I saw their defensive numbers when they played against the Lakers, and I think they were third in defense. And that was a really funny game. It was a lot of styles makes fights type of game because they were 25th in offense and like second in defense, while the Lakers are basically the opposite of that. So it was really interesting, and that's why that game was a rock fight down to the wire. Got that amazing game winner, heartbreaking for me, but amazing game winner from Franz. And I really think the cool thing for them is that they were able to recover after losing, in my opinion, their best player. Although maybe Franz has a claim to that as well. But regardless, 1A, 1B in my opinion. But I guess I can't say that for saying I think he's their best. I think he's 1A. How about that? But yeah, without Paulo Banchero, they've been amazing. Look at this win streak they went on. Then they lost one game and they're back on a streak so far, a couple of games here. So I think that these guys should be pretty good. And there's rumors about them trying to upgrade some of their wing depth on this team. And I think that if they do that, they may give a team a heart attack. Like they're going to be a nasty, nasty out in a playoff series, because they're also massive. They're athletic. They play defense, of course. The offense has a lot of room for improvement. They've got great shot making from some of their players. I think that they could be a really interesting team. The Knicks have just kind of kept that train going. They've been able to rebound as well. I keep saying that, but slow start. They've been able to come back around. Their offense has been electric in the games that I have seen from them. It seems like they don't really struggle to score. They go out there and they do their thing. Most recently, blowing away the Phoenix Suns. I didn't even see that game, but look at these last few games. But again, I mean, out of the last 5 games here, the only game I would say they should probably struggle with would be Phoenix if they had Durant, which they didn't. So, like, this is kind of the point here, too. Like, they probably shouldn't have lost that Chicago game. I don't know the context behind it. Brooklyn is a tough out, but still a game you should win in the New York matchup. Washington, but again, this is kind of the point from the earlier in the video, is that, like, basically, if you're in the Eastern Conference, if you start slow, it doesn't matter. It does not matter, because you're going to get a lot of opportunities to beat these teams. And you still have to go out there and cash that check, right? But still, they've been able to do it, so that's pretty great. Now we're going to go kind of rapid fire through some of these teams. There's a 3-way tie at 7-10. Kind of interesting here. I still think the Pacers are underperforming. I have no clue what's gone on with, I was going to say Maxey, but Halliburton here. It definitely has not played. I'm going to pull him up here. Has definitely not played the way you would have expected him to up to this point. So let me see his numbers so far as well. Oh my God. I didn't realize they were that bad. I thought they were like 19, which I was going to say, like, is not what you would want, but I could maybe live with 19. 16 in more minutes than last season. Efficiency is brutal. 10% less efficiency, 6% less on the 3, taking 8 per game. Assists are down, which is not terribly surprising, I guess. But that's still a great number of assists. They're -4 with him on the court. Steals are also down, which is a big part of his game and the way the team gets in transition. It's not a huge dip. He was about the same number last year. Man, Maxey. I keep wanting to say that because it's Tyrese. Halliburton's been pretty bad this year. Last time I checked in on the Pacers, their pace, everything just wasn't what it was the year prior. They weren't playing like the team they were last year. But the thing with last year was that injury to Halliburton kind of really derailed the team. And I didn't, if I remember correctly, he didn't get back to form or close to form until towards the end of the season last year. And that was what, in the middle of the season. So that really, really derailed them. But I mean, I think they've still got obviously plenty of time, especially in the East, as we've detailed already, to kind of rebound here. A couple of these other teams like Brooklyn, Chicago, I expect them to be sellers. So they're probably going to drop further. I think the Pistons are kind of in limbo right now. They want to win. They've had a pretty tough schedule last time I checked. They want to win as many games as possible. They could easily make it if a couple of these teams drop out into a play-in spot, and we'll see what happens there. Although I think, didn't they just have injury issues? Did somebody just get injured? I don't want to say anybody is because I don't want to try to like speak it into existence or anything, but I feel like I just saw something about that. But also, same deal goes for Charlotte. They're also in the same exact position. And then Toronto and Washington just kind of going along, kind of doing what they got to do. They're not really invested in this season all too much. They're more invested in what happens after this season. And then lastly, Philadelphia. Oh, boy. Before I even make a comment on this, let me look at their game log. Jeez. 5-game skid there. A win versus Brooklyn, then a 30-point beating to the Clippers. That's a nasty skid. Let me see what's going on with production. Let's see, PG. 8 games on the season still. He played on November 20th against Memphis. So PG, oh, that's right. He had that injury. He's back out. So I forgot about that. How's Joel been doing? Same deal, out since Memphis. Okay. Well, I don't know that they've played since then, have they? It's been 5 days, so probably. Yeah, I think they did. I just saw it. So yeah, Joel's played what, 4 games? This is brutal. They need their guys to get healthy. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. That's truly what it boils down to. You can't even make an assessment on this team until they get healthy in terms of like how good this team actually is. But as far as biggest disappointment, so far, it's them, and it's not even remotely close. There's not even a single team, like they're so far away from the next closest team. I don't even know who that is. This is the biggest disappointment by far so far in the NBA season. And there's a lot of reasons as to why, but the primary reason is that they haven't been able to get their guys in the court. And then they started off the season with Maxey playing really good, but unfortunately he got injured. But the lone bright spot is the rookie has been amazing on this team. And so if there's anything you could take away, it's him and his production. He's been amazing. He's definitely earned himself a bigger role going forward. Let's move over to the Western Conference. We kind of briefly talked about the Warriors, but yeah, they're amazing so far, tied for the number 1 seed with the Thunder. The Thunder, really, really interesting how they were able to stem the tide, where there was like a few games there where they didn't have a big guy. Thankfully, Hardenstein, I believe, came back right in the nick of time. But regardless, I mean, they got great production from their guys wherever they could. There are still a few players that are not shooting the way that you'd want to, but their impact, is there in other areas like Caruso. Obviously, I'm not too worried about that with him. As long as he's giving you impact in terms of, on the defensive side, then you're good. So that's the main thing I'm looking for him. But the Thunder, they're right where I expect them to be, tied or at the top of the standings. That's what I expect. The Rockets, I don't know their schedule. I do not know. But the Rockets have been obviously pretty good. First in rebounding, 28th in assists, 3rd in opponents' points per game. They're getting out there and they're locking you up and they're getting the rebounds. I actually need to see the player production too on this team because I don't know that we've done a single Rocket video. I don't know that we have. Who's their leader scorer? Sengun? Jalen Green, Sengun. Okay. Is Sengun the best player on this team? Rockets fans, post down below. I believe that's probably the case. Looks like he also leads them. No, Dylan Brooks leads them by 1 point in plus minus. Brooks is shooting 40% on 3-on-5 attempts. That's pretty good. 13 points per game, 3 rebounds, 1.5 or 1 assist, basically. Sengun's giving 18 points. The shooting is not there still, but that's all right. Not really worried about that. He's given them 10 rebounds and 5 assists with the steal and a block. Yeah, I think he's their primary guy playing 30 minutes. Fred, 14 points, 6 assists. Would like to see that go a bit higher. He's not been great so far this season. 40% from the field, 30% from three. Yeah, he's not been great, but he's the next best net rating out there. So obviously he's been put in positions to be successful for them. Jalen Green is the one that gets all the acclaim. He's the only one I ever see people talk about out there, and he's not shooting great either. He's shooting a whopping 38%. This is why their offense is so poor. Points per game, that's not that bad, 14th, but the assists might be a part of it too. That tells me these guys are going out there and whatever they're doing, it's probably a lot of isolation basketball. That definitely could be improved on. The 3-point shooting hasn't been great either. As a team, they're shooting a whopping 32%. They're getting to the line 24 times, which is solid. 15 offensive rebounds. So they're kind of winning. What they're doing is they're playing great defense, but they're winning on the margins by beating you with the offensive rebounding and just rebounding in general, which is obviously shown by being the best rebounding team at 50 per game. And it's crazy because I want to see the rebounding overalls. Who's the next? Men Thompson. Okay. Jabari Smith. Okay. That's fair. Definitely makes sense. Speaking of Jabari, he's at 42, 30, 33 there. Okay. I was wondering if he took another leap this year. He hasn't. It doesn't show that he has. Maybe he's taken a defensive non-box score related leap that I'm not seeing, just looking at the stats, right? That's always a possibility, always fair. So Rockets fans, please post down below what your thoughts are on the team so far. Moving on from them, the Lakers were next, and I'm not really going to talk too much about them. I'm kind of annoyed with them, given that they've slid on a couple of games. What I'll say is, if you asked me prior to them starting the season, if I thought they'd be in the 4th seed, 16 games in, I would have said no. I would have said maybe 6th seed. Despite 2 ugly losses, one absolutely which if you're a Laker fan, which loss is worse in your books? The Nuggets one, in my opinion, is the one. Because if you saw that third quarter, there's no way anybody could tell me anything different. They absolutely quit on that game. They stopped playing. They absolutely stopped playing that game. It was crazy. They said, you know what? The Nuggets want this game, they could have it. I don't know that I've ever seen a team, probably have, but I don't know that I've ever seen a team flat out quit like that. They gave up. They did. Nobody can tell me otherwise. At least the Magic game, they gave that one away, missing all those free throws, especially late in the game. And then you tempt the basketball gods, you get what's coming to you, and they had a big shot made in their face. But yeah, I don't really have much to say. But like I said, I am optimistic about the start that they've had. Have they had some easier games? Yes. But like I said earlier, you have to bank those games. Those are the games. The key marquee matchups are not the games that make up the bulk of your record. The ones that make up the bulk of your record that matter the most are the ones that, you get versus the easy teams that you should be winning. If you're losing those games, that's when you fall out of the picture and you don't have the opportunity to get to where you want to be. Obviously, you want to win those marquee games. I'm not saying that's not the case. You want to win those games, and every win is equal, right, in terms of the stat book. But at the end of the day, there are far more opportunities versus those weaker teams that you need to beat up on. And so when you get those games, and that's not just for them, that's for any of these teams, you need to win them. So they've, for the most part, done that. They had a weird slide in there in the middle of their season so far where they kind of went 1-4 that they probably shouldn't have. They could have at least won one more of those games. But regardless, interesting position they're in. Clippers just keep on going. I actually really like their roster. They're on a 5-game streak. I really do like the roster construction. I said this in a video prior to the season, that if they're going to get 22 and 9 from Harden, I really like the way that the roster is built around just with a bunch of defensive athletes. That's one of my favorite team constructions in the league, if I'm being honest. I think that it's really well put together. And they're doing this without their best player, but they're kind of used to it. I think more so what it is not so much that they're doing it without Kawhi. It's that they're doing it and PG is also gone, right? Neither player was out there a ton, but losing 2-star players, basically, that's a big deal. You also lost Russ for what that's worth, but they've been able to rebound here pretty well. I mean, Harden is shooting abysmal from the field, 36 from the field, 31 from 3, 90% from the free throw line. That's fine. He's getting 20 points per game. He's getting a lot of free throws, and he's 7 free throws per game. 9 assists, 7 rebounds. 1.5 steals, almost a block per game. So Harden's locked in on the defensive side. His offense just hasn't been there yet. And I think that, like I talked about in the previous video prior to the season, some of that's just first step missing. He's probably getting some open looks that aren't going. He's taking 8 threes per game. If he's also heavily relying on that step back three still to the degree he was, that may be part of it too. But they've had great production from some of their other guys, namely Powell and Zubac have been awesome. They also have had great just defensive capability from their guys. And Derek Jones has turned into a 3-and-D wing. Like over the last couple of years here, he's always been an athletic defensive player, but he's really apparently got the three ball going to a whopping 43% on 3 attempts. I'll take that. For example, if you're a Laker fan, if Vando could give us Derek Jones production with, the defensive, all that stuff, but also giving us this 3-point shooting, I'll take it. I'll take it. I think Vando is better in terms of certain things like rebounding, defensive playmaking. I think that stuff, but the 3-point shooting on 3 attempts, that'll keep teams honest, right? You love to see that. But they've had several guys that have underperformed or are not playing as much as they would probably like to, like Bones or like Mo Bamba. They've had several guys that are not playing the way that they would want to. But for every one of those guys, it feels like looking at this, there was a guy like Chris Dunn who is having a good season so far, and has been a positive for them out there. And again, I didn't really mention him too much. I kind of threw a name out there, but where's he at? Powell. Yeah, Powell. I sorted it differently. He's been awesome. He's been able to carry this team's offensive load, and he's been doing it efficiently. My God, I knew he was doing it efficiently, but my God, 8 threes per game, 50% basically. He's been lights out. Played 15 out of their 18 available games. He's been a killer for them. So that's one of the main reasons that they've been able to kind of stay afloat. I don't know what the Clippers thing is this year, though. I don't see them pushing deep into the conference or anything. I don't even know if it matters about the matchup. I don't know that they're going to have enough star power and offense to beat a lot of these other teams that are ranked above them in an actual series. I think they would make it really tough on the Lakers, though, if I'm being honest. Just because the athletic difference, as currently constructed, the Lakers may be the least athletic team. I want to say in the NBA, but I feel like there's probably 1 or 2 that are below them. But they're probably bottom 5 least athletic teams in the league, which is disgusting. And what I mean by that is that they don't have foot speed. They don't have just athletes, running, jumping, all that. They don't got it. They got LeBron. They got AD. And they got a couple other guys in the team that are okay athletes, like Cam and Max. I think that's kind of what it is. And also perimeter size, they just don't have these things. They're putting a lot of minutes on guys like Dalton, who I think is a good athlete, but I think he grades very highly, but I don't know if he knows how to use his athleticism the way he should. So I'll just say he's an average athlete. How about that? That may be over or under depending on how you feel about it. But regardless, they're putting a lot of minutes on Dalton. They're putting a lot of minutes on D'Lo, who may be the worst athlete in the league, to be honest. Gabe, who may be right behind him as worst athlete in the league. Austin, who is not a great athlete, kind of below average. They're kind of in a situation like that. They've got some good ones like Jackson, Koloko's okay. LeBron and AD are probably their most athletic players out there. Rui is athletic, but kinda, because he doesn't have the foot speed. That's Rui's big Achilles heel. He doesn't have the foot speed to do anything you really want him to do. They're just a weird team. So I think, long story short, the Clippers, with all that, I think there's a really high floor when you've got those athletes out there. And so that's why putting Cam or Vando in the Lakers rotation alongside these guys, it jumps off the page so much, because all of a sudden you have something that you just didn't have. Especially when you've got low motor athletes like LeBron and AD. As much as I love them, they're very low motor. They're not going for, especially LeBron nowadays, which is fair. He's 40. But regardless, I think you really need to make up for that in players around them. That's why those other guys stand out so much when they're out there. The Clippers, I think, would make it pretty hard on them. I do. But other than that, I don't know what their goal is this season. I think that they're probably in a weird spot where they just are probably primarily trying to sell tickets. I don't know. They're not going to push deep. They're going to be in limbo. They're like the quintessential middle of the pack team. But regardless, I do like what they've done. Denver on the upward swing. You know what? If you had told me AD was the MVP, I would have said, okay. I think there were other good players, like obviously Jokic, right? But I actually genuinely think that those are the games, like that one that they played against the Lakers the other day. Those are the games that AD needs to go out and win if he wants to be MVP. And it's not all on him. He had a bad game in that game, but it's not all on him, right? But I think he has to take those matchups extremely personal, extremely prejudiced, and he needs to go out there and play like his life depends on it if he really wants to push for those types of awards, right? He can't have these random blip games. I just don't know that he can. I said prior to the season starting that if he was going to win it, he needed to be what he's been so far for the most part, 30 points per game, 12 rebounds. That's mostly what he's been. And the Lakers needed to be a top 3 or 4 seed at worst. Ironically, that's kind of where they're at. However, back to the Nuggets, Jokic has been so amazing that he's going to wind up messing around and winning it. If all things stay the way that they are, if the Nuggets push to like a top 5 seed, I think he may mess around and win it. The only other person I think currently that has a good shot is like Shea. I don't even know if a Cleveland player will get it. Sorry, Donovan. I know he's pretty high in the rankings. I don't think he'll get it. Boston, maybe Tatum will get it. But like Jokic he's a really good, I think actually he was number 1 on ESPN's recent rankings. And some of that's because they're on a surge. 7-3. And the only games they lost, I'm pretty sure, were the games Jokic didn't play. So, or no, they lost one game with Jokic out there in that game prior to the Laker game, right? But then they lost 2 without him, I believe is how it went. So like they've just been on a surge, and they started similarly to like how the Bucks and Sixers started, where they were unable to do anything but kind of just pushed. So yeah, Jokic has been amazing. Russ had a great game against the Lakers, amazing game, and I really thought that seeing him out there as just a pure athlete, he can do some things obviously, but just the athletic profile from Russ, it looks so different than the Lakers when they're employing guys like D'Lo and Gabe Vincent in the lineup. It doesn't make sense. They don't have a guy like that. They do not, and I keep going back to them. They don't have a guy like that, and it really, really stands off a page when the other team does. But yeah, the Nuggets have been amazing. The Grizzlies, they're just trying to get healthy. Actually, I saw Ja is going to come back. I would expect them to be closer to a top 5 seed. It's just weird. I don't know who's falling out. Is that the Lakers? Is that the Clippers? Is it the Rockets? I don't know. But I would expect them when all things are all said and done to be closer to there. Speaking of top 5 seed, the Suns should also be in the mix. But, Durant was out and they lost 5 games without Durant. 5. So they were like, what, a top 1 or 2 seed prior to that. So, yeah, I'm not too worried about them with Durant coming back. But they should be able to push to being a top seed. But again, I don't know who's falling out. This is why the West is interesting, because there's so many good teams that should be up there. Another one is the reigning conference champions, the Mavericks. They've had a really interesting season so far. Luka just doesn't seem like he's mostly himself. In fact, I think he's out now, right? Did Luka just is he out? I believe Luka may be out. I don't see it here, but I'm not going to obviously dig for it. But they've had a couple really tough games. They lost to the Heat in the last game. Ooh. Let me see how this game went. Sorry if I'm not giving your specific team too much talk time. Yeah, Luka wasn't in this game like I thought. The video's already longer than I want it to be. It's twice as long as I want it to be. But yeah, without Luka, they're not doing anything. But if they could stay afloat for however long he's gone, I don't know the timetable, then they'll be all right. I expect them to be better than what they are, though, to be honest. They're 5-5 in their last 10. That's just not going to cut it. The Spurs, kind of just, they're on a 3-game streak, kind of just doing their thing. They're another team like the Clippers where when it's all said and done, I expect them to be pretty close to 500. That's about what I expect for the Spurs, which is actually pretty good. It's a good jump. They added a couple veterans in the offseason that have been awesome for them. I saw Harrison Barnes win Player of the Week, and Chris Paul's been pretty good for them too. And obviously they've had Wemby and some of the other young guys play their roles pretty well. And I expect them to be right around there. Another team that should be going up is the next two, actually. The Timberwolves and the Kings. Both teams should be going up. Not so sure why they're around this period, But what I will say in the case of the Timberwolves, I mean, they've lost some really tough games. They've won some really tough games, kind of an up and down season. But what we're seeing, I think, is the time it takes to gel with new players, time to get the rotations properly. Some players, like last time I checked, DiVincenzo was not having a great season so far. They've also had issues with the style of play out there. I mean, it's just kind of tricky when you're going to try to shift the roster the way that they have. And I think Randall's been pretty good for them. He's gotten his last time I looked at it, which is a few games ago. He's gotten his, which I'm not too worried about. But I do think that just having the roster that they have, the way that they had it, does create some concerns for the way that the team could play. And to still shooting 11 threes per game at 40%. My God, 44%. He is still blisteringly hot on insane attempts. So that's he's making 5 threes per game. That's crazy. That's flying under the radar, I think. he's gone crazy. Julius Randle, 36% from 3, 50 from the field, 22 points. He's giving you what you would expect. Nas is doing his typical Nas read. McDaniels is giving you typical production there as well, but they are a negative with McDaniels on the court. But again, they're at 500, so there's going to be so many guys that are like right there at the line or heavy ups, heavy downs, things like that. Like Alexander Walker is their best plus minus player. Conley there. Ant is +2. DiVincenzo's +1. The funny thing is, without digging too deep, if I remember correctly, looking at a lot of their advanced data, DiVincenzo was in some of their best possible lineups, so they're still better with him out there. It really just depends what you're doing, what you're looking for. He's playing 26 minutes per game as a backup guard. He's been healthy for all of their games. He's played out there. They've missed Conley for a few games, but then when you look at their bench, they have a number of guys that have just flat out not played a lot of games. Seems like it's been a pretty big revolving door of bench guys, but for the most part, they've got their core, 8 players playing. So that's good at least. They're getting good production from most of their guys. But if I look at their schedule, it's probably also just a tough schedule so far. They're right in the middle for offense, upper end for defense, upper third. Last game was against Boston. Okay, lost by 2. Toronto probably should have won that. You won these 2. That's fine. That's right. There's no way you should have lost 2 back-to-back games to Portland. That just should not have happened. I don't even care what the context was. That just shouldn't have happened. Miami is fine. San Antonio, okay, that's fine. Wemby out there. Dallas, another one that's fine. You shouldn't have lost to Chicago first week of the season. The other games were all understandable losses. Actually, was that preseason? That might have been preseason. Yeah, it's preseason. The 2 Portland losses are brutal. They swing this team's record a lot. Let me see the standings with those Portland losses as wins. They're swinging this like crazy for this team. What does it look like? What will they be? 10-6? Oh, they're tied with the Lakers if they win those 2 games. That's a huge swing. But that's also why you don't overreact early in the season, right? That's exactly why. The Kings have been without Monk, if I remember. He is about to come back as well, so that's one of the reasons that they've kind of struggled. They've also lost some really close games, namely the Laker game when LeBron just shot them out of the game first week of the season. He went crazy Super Saiyan mode and just destroyed them. And that just happens sometimes. You're going to have games every season where that just happens. There's nothing you can really do about it from some of these star players around the league because there's so much talent in the NBA. But I'm not too worried about the Kings. They're another team I expect to rebound. The bottom 3 teams, I don't really have many comments on, unfortunately, because they're not really doing much. I will say the Blazers have so far overperformed. Their record is a little bit inflated because they stole 2 games. They should be at 6-12, but they stole 2 games, or 5-12. They stole 2 games against the Wolves that they shouldn't have. I don't even care about the context. Ant could have been out, and they should not have lost those games. But really, the Pelicans, they may be the next closest disappointment now that I think about it to the Sixers because they haven't been able to get healthy. They're down here for the exact same reasons, actually, because of player health. In fact, their entire team is basically injured. They're 1-9 in the last 10. Murray is about to come back in a few games. I saw a few days here. That doesn't really move me much. They're in a weird spot right now where they might as well just kind of pack it in for the season because I don't know if you're going to rebound from a 4-13 start. Like, you'd have to rip off like a I don't know, 8-2, 10 last 10, 8-2, and then for the next 10 go like 7-3. Like you'd have to do something like that. Where you're winning, I don't know, 15 out of 20 games or something in the West. The Lakers did, back to them again because of the primary team I covered. They did something similar at the end of last season where they basically won almost all of their games. They seriously did, but they were hard locked into the ninth seed because of the fact everyone around them was winning. So like you also need some luck there. You need to win some of these matchups against some of these teams like the Blazers, the Jazz, these teams ahead of you that will push you ahead of them by putting a loss on their record too. I just don't know if the Pelicans are up for that with all the injuries they've had. But there's a long season still. We're only 17 games in, like not even a third of the way. Still a long season here. All right, guys, this was a longer podcast style video that was supposed to be literally about 15 minutes, but I got into it and it was pretty fun just to talk to you guys. So if you watched the entirety of the video, thank you from the bottom of my heart so much. I hope that you guys enjoyed. Once again, remember to subscribe. Also, if you watched the whole video, post down below in the comments. I watched it all, and thank you. All right, guys, so later today, we'll have more content, but previously we had a ton of videos you probably missed. They're going to have a pop-up on the screen. Make sure you click it before you go, and we will see everyone over there. Peace.